everybody. Welcome back to the Start Marketing Podcast. This is Joe Sanders taking you through this today. It's great to have you. We are going through the 5 steps to social media success. We started with finding the right audience. We started with that. We moved on to create the right content, promote your business as a brand, use ample resources. And today we are on step 5, which is use analytics in order to make sure that your marketing campaigns are actually working. We have to analyze our campaigns in order to know if they're working or not. With me again today is the lovely, talented marketing genius herself. Jillian Kearns is with us to help us understand how our digital marketing campaigns are working based on using proper analytics. Jillian, how are you today?
Good. How are you doing? Thanks for having me back.
Yeah, I'm great. Great feedback on the previous episode from you. You added a lot of great insight into this. So let's dive right into it. So, we're going through this process of making sure that we're not just posting things, but we're marketing things, right? We say stop posting, start marketing. That happens to be the name of a book written by some schmo named Joe Sanders that you can buy on Amazon that will take you through all this stuff. But really the idea of stop posting, start marketing is all about, it came from, my history of having small business owners, mid-sized business owners, even some large companies call me and ask me, hey, Joe, social media doesn't work. Social media marketing doesn't work. Digital marketing doesn't work. We've tried it. It doesn't work. And I always say, I always ask people, I say, hey, listen, what did you do when your digital marketing campaigns didn't work? What did you do? And most of the time people tell me, I have no idea what we did. That's because you're not coming from a strategic position. You don't know who you're marketing to. You don't know what kind of content you're putting out there. You don't know how it's promoting you as a brand. You're not using enough resources and you're not analyzing your results. So let's just go right into this. So if I've done all these steps, I've taken all this time, I've created content, I've done my CPMs, I've done all this stuff. And I'm sitting back and I'm saying, well, how the heck do I know that this is working? Now, Jillian, you work on social media campaigns pretty much all day.
Yep.
Big campaigns, small campaigns, paid campaigns, organic campaigns. I want to know just from you, take a few minutes here and tell us what are some of the things, if somebody's looking at this for the first time, that they should be looking at sort of as a baseline to know, well, if I have absolutely no idea what I'm doing, what metric should I look at just to know that maybe I am getting something in return? Where would you guide somebody to go in that regard?
Yeah, so I think looking at it for the first time, it can definitely be pretty intimidating. There's a lot of numbers, there's a lot of stats to look at because when it comes to digital and social media, everything is trackable. But I know we like to focus on 3 key metrics, which are reach, how many different people are seeing our content, engagement, the number of interactions your content is getting, and growth. So new people you're bringing in that are signing up to follow your page actively.
Yeah, that is so important because I think when people come to me and they will tell me, help me, Joe, help me, Jillian, my digital marketing campaigns don't work, or they've never worked, or this stuff doesn't work. When I'm asking them what they did, that's really what I'm asking them. I'm asking them, how many people did you reach with your campaign? If you're trying to, if you're trying to sell a house on digital marketing, on Facebook, and you reached 300 people in your target audience, that's not going to do it, people. That's not going to be enough because you're talking about a humongous purchase, right? If you're trying to get some people to come to an event, a concert, right, that you need to sell 1,000 tickets, and you only reached 1,000 people, that's not going to be enough, right? So that is so important to understand. How many people did you actually reach? Now, we stop there because I want to explain this to people. In the previous episode, when John and I talked about how to know how much money to spend, we really focused on this thing called the CPM, cost per 1,000 impressions. If you want to know more about that, go back to our previous episode and listen to that. But when we talked about the CPM, we're talking about the cost per 1,000 impressions, right? How much money do I need to spend? And that is so important because you can buy, pay attention, you can buy reach on digital marketing, but you can't buy engagement. What I mean by that is that you can pay money to find the right people to show your ads to, but you can't actually pay them to interact with it, to click on it, to watch your video, to respond, to comment, and things like that. So Jillian, when you're making content, and you're analyzing the content and the campaigns that you're running, why is it so important to analyze these campaigns based on the metrics that you said, as opposed to just, well, it looks good to me, or it feels good, or I think it's good. I mean, you gave us reach, engagement, and growth, but what is the why? Why are you taking the time to look at that? And actually, I'll pose another question to you. Why are you looking at it, and how often are you looking at it?
Yeah, right. So I think it is important to kind of go in at least on a weekly basis and kind of see how your numbers are looking. And it helps us in a handful of ways. I think one way is measuring the success of your campaign, and is the money you're spending, is it worth it?
Yeah.
I think another reason is making sure you're continuing to grow the right audience at a constant rate. Okay. I think it's also important to make sure that your content is resonating with your audience by using those metrics. And it's also helpful in looking back to see, if you are having any issues, or if things are not resonating, or if you're not growing. It helps you go in and kind of pick out those things that aren't working and fix them, so things don't just kind of fester.
Right. And that's really good. And, I'm going to take a second here, because you and I may be assuming that people know what we mean when we say reach, engagement, and growth. So let me take just a few minutes here and explain what I mean by that. Reach is the amount of people you reach. Maybe that one's pretty self-explanatory, but it could be organic reach, which we will define as content that goes out in your social media channels, your digital marketing channels, that you don't pay for. You put it out there. You're not paying Facebook, you're not paying Google, you're not paying Instagram to show it to people. You may have a lot of people following your page, or have a lot of your friends are following you, you're clicking on it, they're looking at it. Great. But that is the organic side. The paid side is that I'm paying somebody to look at my ad. I'm paying people, I'm finding an audience, I'm what they might call a boost or something like that. People ask me all the time, they go, what's the difference between an ad and a boost? Buying an ad and boosting a post? Nothing. It's just that when you go into Facebook Ads Manager, you have a lot more tools to use. But if you promote a post, same with Twitter, you can do it right from the tweet can be boosted, or you can go into Tweets Ad Manager, or you can do a smart campaign on Google, or you can go into Google Ads Manager. Either way, you're putting it out there. That's how many people you're actually reaching. All right, it's really important to know it's that number, whether it's organic or it's paid. Engagement is something that is a very that I actually get asked a lot is, what is engagement? What does that mean? Well, it means a lot of different things. Some areas it means you're clicking on your ad. Some areas it means they're watching your video. Sometimes it means they're commenting or they're sharing your post or things like that. It can mean a whole bunch of different things. But at the end of the day, you really want to focus on engagement. You can have, if you had neither, all three of these metrics are important, but if you wanted to just use one to measure a success of a campaign, engagement would be the one. You cannot run a successful digital marketing campaign unless you have engagement. All right, it won't work. So engagement is, I showed it to people. Remember, I told you can pay for reach, but you can't pay for engagement. So I made content to the audience I wanted to find with my brand. I showed it to them and they engaged with it. And now I'm marketing, not posting, right, Jillian? I'm marketing things. Growth means new people are following my page. New people are following me on Instagram. New people are following me on Facebook or in Twitter or whatever. And in that case, now I'm using several metrics here in order to justify and to validate whether or not my campaigns are successful. And I'll give you an example. So let's throw this out there. Jillian, I'll ask you this. This will be a little role play for you and me. Let's say I have a campaign. I reached 10,000 people. I got 6 engagements and I got 0 growth. Would that be a success?
No.
Thank you. She delayed on that for a second. I think she was drinking water because I know she knew the answer to that. Okay, but I'll throw it to you this way. If I reached 10,000 people, I had 2,500 engagements and 50 on my growth, new followers. Would that be success?
That is a success.
Definitely, right? And so it's that simple at times to look at that. I think sometimes, and you hit it, Jillian, you said it can get really complicated with all these metrics. And there can be, if you go to, if you look at the analytics on Instagram, or, oh my gosh, Google, or analytics on Facebook, there's a million different ways to do this. And those metrics are also very valid and very good to have. But I also think that it's important to focus on those 3 as a basis, but there's more, right? So Jillian, outside of us looking at reach, engagement, and growth, and we just did a little exercise understanding how we would look at that. What other ways, other analytics can we use, whether tangible or intangible, to validate our digital marketing campaigns? What else do you use?
Yeah, so I think it helps to think of it in terms of, what is your goal? What are you trying to achieve for your business? And what kind of campaign you're running. So if we're talking in terms of just more of a general branding campaign, are you seeing positive feedbacks and review from your customers? Are you seeing more people come in person to your events, your restaurants, that sort of thing? Are you just better establishing your brand and making it more recognizable to your customers? It could be as simple as that.
Right.
If we're talking more in terms of a call to action, you want your customers and people who are seeing your content to do something. Cost per click and pay per click and getting leads come more into play. And that's also can be on the Google side of things. So overall, I think it's important to kind of use the analytics in a way that makes sense for you and what you're trying to achieve for your business.
Right. So everybody's going to use this a little differently. Now, we use reach, engagement, and growth because I think it applies to every single platform, and I think it applies to every campaign you're going to run. Those are the main ones. But Jillian's totally exactly right. If you are running a campaign that you're trying to get, let's say you're doing a lead generation campaign. All right, this has been really popular lately with Facebook and Instagram, and Google's doing it now. And if the goal of your campaign is to get leads, well, then obviously you're going to justify the success of your campaign based on how many leads you actually get. That's fairly commonsensical. But here's where it comes into play, where I find the real value in the analytics. Because let's say, go back to my example. I said, Jillian, I had 10,000 people I reached. I had 5 engagements and 0 growth. Jillian said, what'd you say, Jillian? That was good or bad?
Bad.
Bad, right? Bad. Now, what's interesting about that, though, is that if I have a strategy, and let's just say I also got 0 leads. We'll throw that into that. If I have a strategy and I know what audience I reached, and I know what kind of content that I put out there, and I know how is my branding, and I know how much I spent, now I'm looking, what I can do? I can go back to that campaign and I can fix it, right? Because if somebody comes to me and says, well, that didn't work, I'd say, okay, I understand it didn't work, but let's figure out why it didn't work. Maybe our audience is wrong. Maybe we have the wrong people, but the content's really strong. Okay, then we adjust the audience, and then we move on with the content. Maybe the content is wrong. Maybe the audience is right, but we're not putting the right content out there, right? Maybe we're not spending enough money. Maybe instead of reaching 10,000 people, we need to be reaching 100,000 people in order to actually get what we need, okay? That is the beauty of the analytical structure when you're tracking this stuff. And Jillian, you said, how often should you be tracking this stuff?
It's kind of a process. I would say at least weekly.
Okay. So we're tracking this on a weekly basis. Well, maybe we're running a campaign. Maybe we're running a 3-month campaign. And if that's the results after our first week, that 10,000 people, 5 engagements, 0 growth, 0 leads. Okay. Well, if we look at that, and then next week we keep it the same and we look at it again and we get similar results, we pause it now. And now we go back. And then maybe in week 3, we reach 12,000 people and we get 150 engagements, 2 growth, and maybe still at 0 leads. But you know what we're doing there? We're now strategically improving our campaigns based on the analytics that we have. And that's why it's so important, because maybe 3 or 4 weeks down the road, I'm reaching less people. Maybe I'm reaching 6,000 people, but my engagement score is 1,000. I picked up 20 new followers and I got 2 leads. Well, if I'm looking at the analytics, now I know that in that particular campaign, the trick to it was that I needed to reach a more constricted audience, a more targeted audience as opposed to a broader audience. I needed a little better content that had more call to action. And I needed to spend, maybe that cost me more money, but I got leads out of it. If you don't look at this stuff on a consistent basis like that, you will never be able to understand where you have to go in order to change things. So the real value of analytics is it gives you the ability to fix things when they're wrong. Now, Jillian, I used to buy media, and I still do, like traditional media, like radio and TV and billboards and stuff. When I would buy that stuff, it was one and done. If you produce a TV commercial, you produced it. Mm-hmm. It's over. It costs $10,000 and it has to go on television, and you buy the schedule. If you buy a billboard, it's like a couple $1,000s for the print. It's done. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work. In digital marketing, it's a complete opposite. Sure, I need to create content, but if it doesn't work, I can just pause it and I can go back and I can adjust it and I can reset it anytime that I want. Analytics are so important. I think a lot of people miss the fact that you have to compare apples to apples, right? And it's similar to if you were to analyze like your financial position, right? If somebody came to you and said, "Oh, you apply to buy a new house or you want to get a loan or something," they're not just going to look at one score. They're not going to look at one part. They're not just going to look at your credit and say, "Oh, you have great credit. Here's $100,000." They're going to look at your credit and they're going to look at how much money you have and compare to your debt, right? Those are two different metrics. The more metrics you have, the more it will tell the story. So you need at least 3. That's what we always say: reach, engagement, and growth. You need at least those 3, but you're probably going to need other ones. Like if you're trying to collect leads, you're trying to get clicks and all these different kinds of things. All right. So I think that's really important to understand is the real value of using proper analytics is it helps you to be able to fix your campaigns if they're not working. It helps you to justify it and expand on them if they are. Now, this brings me to another question. I'm going to ask Jillian this that I get asked a lot. People ask me, what is a conversion? They want to know, well, I saw on Google that they have conversions, or I saw on Facebook that they have something called conversions. So Jillian, I'm going to throw that to you. And when you tell everybody, what is a conversion in the world of digital marketing?
Yeah, I think it can be a little confusing because it can kind of mean different things to different people. It could mean getting a click, a comment, a response, a sale, a view. I essentially like to think of it of achieving the goal you set out for. So I know one of the best ways to kind of use that as a tool is customers making a purchase from your digital efforts.
Yeah, definitely. And so a conversion is sort of user defined, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like 2 different campaigns
Absolutely.
could be running on the same platform and they could have 2 different conversions. The analytics to do that could be 2 completely different things. Let's say for one example, somebody's trying to collect email addresses. All right. Maybe they're trying to build up an email list and that's kind of what they're looking to do. That would then be their conversion, right? If you're looking to sell watches and that's what you're looking for, your conversion might be when somebody clicks on your ad, goes to your page to buy your watches and then buys it. That might be your conversion. So be careful when you're out there sort of ambiguously defining what a conversion is, because you are the one that has to actually define what it is, because conversions are different to everyone, depending on what kind of a campaign you're actually running. Now, the other way, now that is helpful. I think those reach, engagement, and growth to a point. But as we go through this, how do you know what the number is? So like if I reach 10,000 people and I got 1,000 people to engage with my content, I have a feeling a lot of people are thinking out there, well, is that good? Is that bad? Okay. So we have something that we use over here called the 20/20 rule. All right. And the 20/20 rule I touched upon in the previous episode, and I'm going to talk about it a little bit more. And Jillian knows what this is. She's nodding at me. She's saying, yeah, I know. I've heard this before. But for those of you that haven't, so here's what we do with the 20/20 rule. And the reason that we came up with this is because we've done digital marketing campaigns, social media marketing campaigns for hundreds and hundreds of clients. And we know that this is the metric you use in order to find whether or not campaigns are working properly. I'll preface this by saying some of you may be already achieving this and beyond, and that's great. And some of you may be looking at me and saying, there's no way I could ever get this kind of thing. But what I'm trying to do is give you a baseline so that you have a way to measure how you're doing. So when you start with your audience and you figure out what it is, and again, go back to a previous episode and listen to it, but we talked about it, how to define how many people you should actually reach. Let's say there's 100,000 people in your audience. Okay, we would say on a monthly basis or in some kind of a routine, monthly being the one we usually use, reach 20% of those people. Figure out a way to reach 20%. So of 100,000, it would be 20,000 people. That's what it would be, okay? Now, of those people, we would also say that if you want to get a good engagement score, then you should try to get 20% of those people to engage with your content, which is 4,000. So when you're doing that, what you would do is you would look at your score you would track your analytics on a weekly basis, and you would say, well, how many people am I reaching on a weekly or a monthly basis? Am I reaching 20% of my total audience? And am I getting 20% of those people to engage with my content? What I'm going to tell you guys is that if you can do that, you will be running successful digital marketing campaigns. I promise you. Jillian, would you agree with that?
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you. So I would totally tell you guys that if you can achieve that 20% of the audience you need to reach, and then 20% engagement on those people, you're going to run a successful digital marketing campaign. That doesn't mean that if you go below that you can't run a successful digital marketing campaign. And that doesn't mean if you go above that, you won't be running a while. I'm not saying that. But what I am saying is, for those of you that are struggling with this and trying to find, how do I know how to do this? Define your audience, figure out how many people are in the audience, figure out how to reach 20% of them on a monthly or an annual basis, and then get 20% of those people to engage with the content. And here's the trick. Do it consistently, because you may run into a time when it works and you're saying, wow, I got this. It's working well, but great. It's not really moving the ball for me. Great. I got 20% engagement last week. Big deal. But do it for a year. Do it for 6 months. Do it for 2 years. You will see an incredible return on that if you can be consistent when you're doing this. So, I'll throw this back to you, Jillian. So is there, because I think a lot of people right now would be thinking, well, that's great. So what kind of content, and I know we had an episode on content, but they might be thinking, well, what kind of content will produce to get me to that 20% rule? Do you have any thoughts on that for people who are struggling to have content that's actually giving them any kind of content engagement?
Sure. Yeah. I think video is really hot right now, whether it's overly produced or just you popping in to show something new happening at your business. I think faces and showing people, especially right now, is really good to throw in there, giving a face to your business. And I like to be kind of throwing in customer testimonials a lot lately too. Okay. I think those can be really impactful for your social media. So
what you're telling people is, don't be shy when it comes to your content. Get your face out there, get your business out there, whether you're doing it on a very high level of hiring a videographer, or get your cell phone out, which a lot of these phones can actually take really great content, and get it out there. And that's kind of what you're seeing is working well. And that's great. And I totally agree with that. I see the same thing in my world of marketing as well. Now, one other thing I want to talk about before we get off this is the idea of blips and trends, because this is important when you're tracking your analytics. So let's say you're doing what we said, you're trying to shoot for the 2020 rule. And let's say you're achieving the 2020 rule, and you have next week you put up all your stuff and your engagement score is like 5%. And typically you're getting 20% of your people to engage, and you get 5. So Jillian, if that happened to you, if the past 3 months you're getting 20%, somewhere right around there, and then last week you get 5%, what would you do? Would you freak out, or what would you do?
No, I would not freak out. I would kind of just take in the next week and see if there's certain things or new pieces of content I can throw in to improve. It could just be an off week on the social media sides that happens. It could be you just didn't really create content that really resonated that week. So I would just kind of keep an eye on it, change a couple things here and there, and see if that has an impact.
Yeah, because it could be what I call a blip, which a blip is just, it happened, and you might just rebound the following week for no reason. Maybe we don't know what the reason is, and you're back up to where you were. A trend would be, though, if I told Jillian, if I said, well, Jillian, what if you achieved 20% engagement the last 3 months, and then you had 5%, and then it was 4% next week, and it was 6%, and then it was 4% again. Now we're talking about a trend. Now something has changed. Something is wrong, right? And now is when we have to go back and fix something, because something's off. Something in our equation is wrong. So that's another really important reason to have like a spreadsheet where you can look at all this information so that you know, okay, I had a bad week, but is it just a blip, or am I trending that way? Because this could be positive too. Sometimes you might be running a really good campaign and get a huge week, instead of getting 20% engagement and maybe you got 1 conversion, maybe you had 50% engagement, you got 10 conversions, and then it goes back down again. Well, that's a good thing. I mean, great to figure out what happened, but it might go back to where you were knowing that you took a blip, or maybe you start trending a certain way, really, really high for a certain reason, figure out what that is, and now you can exploit that knowing that, wow, I'm really trending a certain way now in a positive way. And that's another really advantage of tracking your numbers. And I want to also say this too, when Jillian and I are talking about tracking numbers, we're talking about like manually doing this or pulling the numbers out of Facebook, out of Instagram, out of Twitter, and putting them on like somewhere we can see it in one place. There are a lot of tools out there, and they're great, and they'll pull this data for you and show you on a dashboard, and that's great. But I'm a firm believer in having the ease of analyzing. And ease of analyzing for me, at least the way that I do this, is having numbers on a calendar, like stacked up on a spreadsheet, so I can just see them. I can just see them and I can reference them and I can run my equations. However you want to track your campaigns, if you're more of a graph person, or if you want it to be on some sophisticated dashboard, that's fine. Or if you want to have a Google Sheet where you're just putting these numbers in. However you want to do it, it's fine. There's not like a right or wrong way to do it. But I think having a way where you can easily analyze this. For our clients, we call it the 5-minute check-in for our owners. And we send them this on a weekly basis because we know they're really, really busy. We know that they're not sitting around thinking about this all day long like we are. So one of the things we do is we put this in a really short, consolidated email with some quick numbers, so that you literally would take a business owner like 5 minutes to look at this. They could comprehend what's happening in their accounts. And then if they wanted to look at their historical numbers, you give them an opportunity to do that. But I think it's really important. So I'll throw this to you, Jillian. I'd say the 5-minute check-in. How long do you spend usually per account on a weekly basis looking at analytics for your campaigns?
Per account? Maybe 30 minutes to an hour. Kind of depends on the week and what's going on, but it doesn't take long.
Okay.
Just kind of check in.
Yeah. So again, everybody's going to be different, but I think putting enough time into it, because it's one of the things that if people will skip it and they'll be like, well, I don't, this is the one thing I can skip this week is to look at my analytics. I don't need to look at my analytics. I know it's working. And I'll throw this back to you, maybe the last question. We're talking about a lot of tangible ways. What about intangible? I mean, is there a subjective way? I mean, is there something else that you do when you look at your pages to know if they're working or not, outside of just looking at the analytics or the CPC or the PP pay-per-click or anything like that? How else do you go into a social media page and know if it's working for you or not?
So if we're not looking at numbers specifically, just seeing how people are talking about your brand, I find is very helpful. If they're writing more positive contents, if you're hearing from the client that you are filling events and you're filling their spaces, or they're seeing positive trends in that way.
Right.
And I think just staying consistent is a good way to know that you're doing something right. Consistency is key. And if you're consistently seeing people engaging and growing and you're posting daily, those are some things that are helpful to look for if you're not really digging into the numbers.
Yeah. And I think, using your gut too, as a business owner or as a manager of your page, and looking at that page and saying, does this page represent me well? The analytics are great, but I think also looking at the page and saying, man, this page really communicates my brand. It seems like I'm getting some great stuff, because again, we'll say it again, 100, really quick, stupid comments, or, compared to 5 amazing comments, you have to weigh that, right? The 5 really amazing comments as opposed to 10 people that just put a smiley face on there. Well, you can gauge how you want, but there's a school of thought that might say 5's better than 100, and might say 100's better than 5, depending on how you look at it. So I think looking at that page and understanding, am I getting what I want? Am I communicating what I want? And then going to my analytics and saying reach, engagement, growth, conversions, leads, CPC, PPC, and all those kinds of things. Well, great. That's great. Well, Jillian, thanks so much for being on the podcast with us today. We will definitely have you back. Thanks everybody for listening. Again, this is the Start Marketing Podcast. I am Joe Sanders. You can check out please subscribe to our podcast. We will be posting some information regarding this podcast on our page. Check it out. We'll have some links to some helpful places if you're looking for help with analytics. Go back and listen to the other episodes. We went through the 5 steps. Next time, we're going to start breaking down some other key important metrics and some key important attributes of your social media campaigns as we continue this and trying to help people stop posting and start marketing. So thanks again for being here. We look forward to hearing from you again. And it's Joe Sanders saying, stop posting, start marketing.